Today is the 18th of April 2020. I'm Ron Wadhavan, and this is a weekend talk show. I'm going to talk about the data that is coming in and try to get a sense of where we are and what we can expect in the coming days and weeks. Economic data from the early stage of the Great Shutdown have started to arrive now, and they are as bad as can be feared. Worst on record is about to become an all too common refrain in our commentary. 22 million people, or nearly 15% of the US workforce, have filed for unemployment insurance in the past 4 weeks. Retail sales, industrial production, and home builder confidence all posted historic declines, with the New York and Philly Fed indices pointing to even more pain in April. Household relief checks began to arrive, and the $349 billion of PPP loans were exhausted. We think a reload is likely. We are looking at a picture that is not very rosy. Retail sales plunged 8.7% in March as a 26% surge in grocery store sales, which was due to stockpiling of essential foods and toiletries that will most likely not be repeated. It was drowned by the historic declines in both the durable furniture was down minus 27%, autos were down minus 26%, and non-durables, clothing minus 50%, and restaurants minus 27%, discretionary spending. Even this understates the decline in personal consumption, as retail sales don't include hotel stays, airline or movie ticket sales, all of which fell to near zero by the middle of the month. This end of the quarter drop off in activity means Q1 GDP growth will likely be mildly negative, but Q2 will be a disaster. We expect an annualized decline of in excess of 20%. The downside risk to our estimate is if layoffs continue to exceed expectations. In the past 4 weeks, 22 million people, or nearly 15% of the workforce in the US, have filed for unemployment insurance. Layoffs in the directly affected industries have likely already peaked. A barber shop can close twice, but they are also likely picking up in non-directly affected industries as firms continue to come to terms with the extent of the hit to aggregate demand and cut back on expansion plans. And while it is true services are being hit harder, manufacturing is getting pummeled too. Industrial production fell 5.4% in March, the most since the United States demobilized after the Second World War. Meanwhile, the New York and Philly Fed indices point to ISM manufacturing index falling to between 30 and 35. Even housing starts fell 22%, while bustling activity in the first half of the month, while home builder confidence posted its largest 1 month drop ever. There was some relief this week. The $1,200 payments arrived for tens of millions of eligible Americans who have direct deposit information filed with the IRS, the roughly 70 million Americans who do not will need to wait for physical checks to arrive in the mail. All this while uh, financial obligations continue to pile up. We are already seeing the result. Only 69% of apartment tenants paid rent from April 1 to April 5, compared to 82% in the same period last year, while the share of mortgage loans in forbearance leaped from 0.25% to 3.74%. Fortunately, those who have lost their jobs and successfully filed for unemployment insurance, a cohort totaling 12 million this week, ended April 4th, are receiving the additional $600 per week allocated by the CARES Act, which should do a respectable job plugging the sudden income hole in many households' finances. Small businesses have also tapped the fiscal spigot with gusto, already exhausting the 345 billion of Paycheck Protection Program PPP loans, convertible into grants if used for payroll or rent by Thursday morning. The White House reportedly wants to reload with another 250 billion, but many, including us, feel this is insufficient. All told, we would not be surprised by a Phase 4 fiscal package of additional PPP loans, direct household payments, and assistance to state and local governments. Attention has now begun to shift to when the economy can reopen, sorry, can reopen. Well, the economy is not a light which you can switch on or off. Moreover, focus on who has the authority to open the economy, the White House or the governors of states, is perhaps not relevant. The question is who has the ability? The answer is consumers and businesses. Things will only get back to normal when people feel safe, and safety in turn depends on public health response. Let's take a look at the home sales. If there was any juice in the housing market in early March, it likely dried up by the month's end. Home sales had strong momentum headed into March. In the 3 months through February, single family existing, about 90% of the total, and total new home sales notched their strongest pace since late 2006. But stay at home orders began popping up in the middle of March, and we wouldn't be surprised if prospective buyers withdrew from the market even earlier, and the sell off in equity markets, and to adhere to initial social distancing guidelines. These assumptions are complemented by anecdotal reports from all over the country of sellers canceling open houses and buyers walking away from closings. The housing market is not at the center of the current economic storm, but the current environment certainly limits demand prospects. After all, it is hard to visit a future home from the confines of your existing one. Home sales will fall as demand remains anemic for quite some time to come. Let's take a look at the durable goods orders. We expect a steep decline in March durable goods orders. Businesses likely grew cautious in March and began to pare back spending even before lockdowns were officially put in place in the middle of the month. The new orders component of the widely followed ISM manufacturing survey fell to 42.2 in March, indicating the fastest pace of contraction in bookings since 2009. Let's take a look at the consumer sentiment. Consumer sentiment nosedived 18.1 points to 71.0 in the preliminary April report, marking the sharpest monthly decline on record. But sentiment still remains lofty compared to lows touched during the 2008 recession. Sentiment was dragged lower by perceptions of current conditions in April, and with over 20 million Americans filing for unemployment insurance in the past 4 weeks, the only surprise here is that they don't that they didn't fall further. More surprising was that expectations only receded to a level they stood at in 2014. We expect both to be revised lower in the final read due Friday. While we are nowhere near done with the awful economic data, discussion shifted this week to when we can expect the economy to reopen. But even as stay-at-home orders are shifted, it will be consumers' perception that drives the recovery. We will be paying greater attention to sentiment figures for any resurgence. Before that, however, they almost assuredly have more room to fall. Let's take a global review. BOC is following the Fed. Chinese growth nosedives. The Bank of Canada met this week and adopted a series of market measures that were also mirrored in the Federal Reserve's efforts to dive into unexplored monetary policy territory to support the economy and financial markets. Data released last night showed real GDP in China declined 6.8% year over year in the first quarter, easily the biggest contraction since the country began reporting official figures in 1992. The Chinese data provided additional evidence that, unlike a typical recession, manufacturing is outperforming the consumer. In closing, I would like to say that we are still in uncharted territory. We have never had a situation like the one we have right now, and only time will tell how it shapes out to be. For all of us here at Bulls versus Bears Club, I'm Ron, wishing you a great weekend and a safe and healthy week ahead.